You open your banking app, and the number in your account technically went up this year. But somehow, life feels more expensive than ever. Groceries cost more, rent is up, interest on your credit card feels criminal. And every time the news talks about the economy, it sounds like they're describing a completely different planet. And you're sitting there thinking, am I doing something wrong? Or is the whole system just broken? Because here's the thing, you're not bad with money. You're just operating inside a machine most people were never taught how to understand. And once you see how that machine actually works, a lot of what's happening in 2026 suddenly makes sense.
My name is Zach, and I spend way too much time thinking about money, debt, and how the economy actually works. If you're someone who feels like you're working harder, but somehow falling further behind, make sure to hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if this helps you out. Because today, we're breaking down how the economic machine works in 2026, simply, visually, and without the usual financial nonsense. Here's the thing, the economy isn't mysterious. It isn't complicated. At its core, the economy is just people exchanging things. Every time you buy something, every time you get paid, every time you pay rent, that's the economy. Each of these moments is called a transaction. A transaction happens when someone gives money and receives goods or services in return. And when you stack millions of these transactions together, you don't just get activity, you get a system that moves, a system that reacts, a system that behaves in predictable ways. This is the foundation of the entire economic machine. And once you understand this part, everything else becomes much easier to see.
Up until now, everything we've talked about sounds reasonable. People exchange things, transactions stack together, a system forms. So naturally, you might be thinking, if the economy is just transactions, why does it sometimes grow so fast and other times feel like it's hitting a wall? Because there's something we haven't talked about yet. Something that doesn't just move the machine, but changes its speed. And that thing is credit. At first glance, credit looks like money. You swipe a card, you take a loan, you buy something today. But here's what most people don't realize. Credit isn't money. Credit is time. More specifically, credit is spending money you don't have yet. It's pulling future spending into the present. And psychologically, this is incredibly powerful because humans feel today much more strongly than they feel tomorrow. When credit becomes available, people don't just spend a little more, they spend confidently. Businesses don't just grow slowly, they expand. Jobs increase, incomes rise, optimism spreads, and the economic machine starts moving faster. This is where things begin to feel really good, and this is also where people start believing that growth is permanent. But here's the part that often gets missed. Every dollar borrowed today is a dollar that must be repaid later, and repayment doesn't disappear. It waits quietly. As credit keeps flowing, spending stays high. Higher spending leads to higher incomes. Higher incomes make debt feel manageable, so people borrow more, and the system feeds on itself. This is called a feedback loop, and feedback loops are powerful. They can push a system far beyond what feels reasonable, but no system can accelerate forever. At some point, the machine starts overheating, prices rise, resources get stretched, inflation creeps in. And this is where interest rates enter the picture. Interest rates are the brake pedal of the economy. They exist for one simple reason, to slow things down before the system loses control. When rates rise, borrowing becomes more expensive, spending slows, risk-taking cools off, and the machine begins to decelerate. This slowdown is what most people experience as an economic downturn. But here's the important thing. This part isn't a failure. It's a feature. The system is trying to protect itself. This entire process, borrowing, growth,
tightening and slowing is called the short-term debt cycle, and it happens over and over again, every few years, every decade or so. Most people live through several of these without ever realizing it's the same pattern repeating. But beneath this familiar cycle, there's a much bigger one operating quietly in the background. A cycle that takes decades, not years. And this is where the real problem begins. Over time, debt doesn't reset to zero. Each short-term cycle ends with more debt than the last. Why? Because reducing debt is painful. It means slowing growth, cutting spending, accepting short-term discomfort. And psychologically, humans resist that. So instead of resetting, the system rolls forward with more debt and less room to maneuver. Eventually, debt grows faster than income, and once that happens, the machine becomes fragile. Small shocks create big reactions. Interest payments take up more space, flexibility disappears, and policy options start running out. This is the long-term debt cycle. And unlike short-term cycles, this one doesn't resolve easily. It ends in restructurings, deleveraging, or major changes to the system, not because someone made a mistake, but because the machine reached its limits. And this is the part most people never see coming. The economy doesn't break suddenly. It weakens slowly, quietly, until one day, what used to work doesn't. So, if this is how the machine actually behaves, the real question becomes, what happens when high debt meets high interest rates at the same time? And why does this moment feel different from the ones before? That's what we need to talk about next.
Up to this point, everything we've discussed explains how the machine behaves. But it still leaves one big question unanswered. Why does 2026 feel different? Why does it feel heavier, more restrictive, and harder to navigate? The answer isn't one thing. It's a combination of forces colliding at the same time. First, we're entering this period with historically high levels of debt, government debt, corporate debt, household debt. That means the system is already carrying weight before anything new even happens. And when a system is already heavy, it doesn't take much to slow it down. Second, interest rates are no longer near zero. For years, cheap money made borrowing feel harmless. But now, every percentage point matters. Payments rise faster, mistakes get punished sooner, and flexibility disappears much more quickly than people expect. This combination is important. High debt and high interest rates don't just slow growth, they change behavior. People become cautious, businesses delay decisions, risk-taking drops, and psychologically, that caution feeds on itself. At the same time, inflation has changed how people think about money. Even when inflation slows, the memory of higher prices remains. People don't feel richer, they feel exposed. And when confidence breaks, spending habits change long before data reflects it. There's also something else happening beneath the surface. Technology, specifically rapid automation and artificial intelligence. On one hand, this increases productivity. On the other, it concentrates value. Some roles become dramatically more valuable. Others quietly lose leverage. And this creates pressure that doesn't show up evenly across the economy. This is why averages can be misleading. The system might look stable on paper, while individuals feel squeezed in real life. And this is where many people start blaming themselves. They work harder, they cut more, they try to optimize everything. But effort alone doesn't fix structural pressure. Here's what most people don't realize. The economy doesn't reward effort evenly. It rewards position, your debt level, your interest rate, your flexibility, your optionality. Two people can work just as hard and end up with completely different outcomes. This doesn't mean the system is evil. It means it's mechanical, and machines don't respond to emotion. They respond to inputs. So the real question becomes, what inputs can you control? Because while you can't redesign the machine, you can position yourself inside it. The first thing to protect is flexibility. High-interest debt reduces future options. Every dollar committed is a dollar that can't respond to change. Reducing that pressure isn't about being conservative, it's about staying mobile. Second, liquidity matters more than people think. Cash isn't just idle money.
It's decision-making power. It gives you time, and time reduces mistakes. Third, income matters, but stability matters more. Reliable income beats volatile income during uncertain periods, and income that can adapt beats income that depends on one narrow path. Fourth, understand where you are in the cycle. You don't need perfect timing, you just need awareness. Aggressive moves work early. Defensive positioning matters late. Mistakes happen when people confuse one phase for another. And finally, invest in skills that compound. Not just technical skills, but learning speed. The ability to adjust, reskill, and reposition is one of the most undervalued assets in the modern economy. Here's the takeaway. The economy isn't broken, and you're not failing. You're operating inside a machine that's under pressure. Once you understand how it works, panic turns into clarity, and clarity leads to better decisions. You don't need to predict the future. You just need to stay flexible, aware, and positioned. That's how people don't just survive cycles, they come out stronger on the other side.